Metal coatings and patinas. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the basic use of the copper B metal coating and the Tiffany green patina. Now to begin, we're going to prime a bust. This is a bust of Biddy Mold Supply founder here, so Old Man Rogers in his prime. And this is a clean resin bust. It doesn't have any mold release residue or anything like that on it. And that's important because anytime you're going to paint a resin piece or a plaster piece, you want to make sure it's clean and free of any kind of release oils or release residue. Now, before you apply any kind of metal coating, we really recommend a good primer. And the Sculpt Nouveau Prime It Primer is ideal for this kind of application because two things. It's water-based, so you don't have to wear a respirator or anything like that with it. It's no VOCs or anything like that. It's water-based, easy cleanup. You can spray it, brush it. But also it sticks really well to our easy flow resins and a lot of other difficult to paint surfaces like a lot of polyurethane, semi-rigid, and hard plastics. So we're priming this with the Prime It primer, and I recommend at least 2 coats of the primer before you move on to the copper metal coating. Now, the copper B metal coating is exactly what the name implies. It is a copper powder suspended in an acrylic base. And because it's a very fine copper powder, that allows us to actually oxidize it, as you'll see later on. So rather than just having colored aluminum powder, we're actually working with real copper. It's just suspended in a solution. And one of the things you might have noticed there that I shook that copper B up really good first. You always want to make sure you shake it up really good to suspend the metal powder. If you don't, you'll wind up not getting quite the same luster you would when everything's properly suspended. Now with our copper B metal coating, anytime we're going to apply a patina like we're going to do later in this video, we have to do that in 2 stages. We're going to apply a base coat first, and once we apply the base coat, we're going to allow that to completely dry, which as with any air drying material will be relative to the ambient temperature and the ambient humidity. So here we waited about 3 or 4 hours for that to dry, and then we moved on with the second coat. And one of the things you'll notice, we're using a cheap brush here to apply this, but obviously the better quality brush you use, the better quality paint job you'll get. But you just know that you could also spray this on, you can put it on with a roller. There's really no limit to it as long as you're applying it the way you would any type of paint. We've even used a sponge before to apply this. The important thing is that you apply that base coat and then you come back with that second coat. And after you apply your second coat, you'll notice here that once I've completely covered my piece, I'm going back and using the end of the brush to just gently stipple the surface. And since I'm using that cheap brush, that's a good way to remove those brush strokes and give it a light texture all over the surface. And that very light texture is what's going to help that metal coating react with this patina. Now for our patina, we'll be spraying on a reactive traditional patina, and this is the Tiffany green, which is green that leans just a little bit more towards blue. And remember that since this is a traditional reactive patina, you're only going to get that green if you're working over a copper alloy, like copper, brass, or bronze. And the other thing that's really crucial here is we're spraying this on while that copper B metal coating is still wet. And that's important because in order for it to get a reaction, that copper B has to be wet. And you'll see here, as soon as we get a light spray applied from all different directions, it'll start reacting and forming that nice green oxide on the surface. Now it took the piece sitting overnight to completely develop, and there we have our finished oxide patina using the Tiffany green. And from here we could dry brush some more copper over the top, or we could seal it with clear guard to have a finished piece. But there you have the basic application process of patinas and metal coatings. And of course you can find all these products on our web store at brickintheyard.com.